I heard I was in my heart, I was the baby. Ah, what's good? Chatellini, Wagyu my G skis, huh? Let's have some fun on the Twitch today, huh? And you know about the figure and beauty of mesmerize. It's all about it. My shade, cause she look nice. I don't talking about that what little Betty who has a light. Mesmerize. Talking about that one little Betty who has a light. And I'm talking about that one little Betty who has a light. You know, figure and beauty of mesmerize.
The leap of faith. So here's the plan. I want to recreate the scene shot for shot. And I know what you might be thinking. Isn't that kind of boring? What's the point of making something exactly the same? And honestly, I get it. But for me, it's more about testing how much I can actually replicate in Blender with my current skills. And since I'm going shot for shot, that means recreating everything. And in these opening shots, Miles' face is exposed. So, character modeling time. Now, character modeling isn't really my strong suit. I still struggle a lot with the proportions and the overall form. But luckily, I found this free Spider-Man model online that I could use as a base. In these scenes, all that's visible of Miles is his face, so I focused on getting that right. I started by blocking out the rough shape, and then worked on adding the finer details. Once I was happy with the look, I painted the model, his face, and eyes, which was all relatively simple. And of course, I have to create that iconic Spider-Verse.
Oh shit, bro. My lower back.
March 29th, 2024. The date Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse was supposed to be released in cinemas. It's been nearly a full year since then, and not only has the movie not been released, Sony hasn't even announced a release year. To me, this all seemed incredibly weird, and the more I dug, the more bizarre it got. The movie's been plagued by delays, drama, and a production nightmare that Sony doesn't want you.
Hold on, wait. Spider-Man Beyond the Verse release delayed again. Verse an emotional video to activate social media. Spider-Verse artists say working on sequel was death by 1,000 paper cuts. Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse update suggests fans have a long time until release. Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse gets a devastating release update. Spider-Verse creator breaks on its rumors of Beyond the Spider-Verse getting scrapped. Spider-Man versus very far off. Script was far off. Spider-Man Beyond the Verse release delayed again.
you to know about. But the truth? It's even worse than you think. I've gone and dug up all the information so we can talk about how we got here and what this all means for not only Sony and the franchise, but the rest of the industry too. Let's rewind all the way back to the beginning. Into the Spider-Verse. This was Sony's big gamble, a film they hoped would redefine their animation studio's reputation after years of atrocious movies. No one could have predicted just how massive a success it would be though. Well, almost no one. Even during production, there were signs that Into the Spider-Verse was something special. Almost no one. No one could have predicted just how massive a success it would be though. Well,
Into the Spider-Verse.
almost no one. Even during production, there were signs that Into the Spider-Verse was something special. Its bold, hand-drawn comic book aesthetic, seamlessly blended with CGI, was already being described as revolutionary. But behind the scenes, things weren't nearly as smooth. See, Phil Lord and Rodney Rothman, the writers behind Miles Morales' cinematic debut, clearly wrote an incredible story. But less than a year before release, they decided to change the story and overhaul the entire third act, completely rewriting and restructuring the movie's climax. That's an honestly insane decision that threw the entire production into chaos, forcing animators and artists to completely scramble under extreme pressure. Still, Into the Spider-Verse not only became one of Sony's highest grossing films, it won the Oscar for Best Animated Feature.
Spider-Man into the Spider-Man.
So no harm done, right? Well, not quite. That last-minute, high-pressure creative process, yeah, it set a precedent that would have major consequences down the line. Now, here's where things get interesting. Even before Into the Spider-Verse hit theaters, Sony was so confident in its potential that they had already started early work on a sequel. The film's insane success in 2018 only cemented that decision, and by November 2019, Across the Spider-Verse was officially announced. The studio wasted no time hyping it up, but then, silence.
Always Flex Protect for up to 0 leaks, up to 0 bunching, up to 0 feeling, always.
Okta secures AI, so you'll feel good turning it loose to do its job, knowing the right controls are in place.
Months passed, then an entire year. By 2020, updates on the sequel were scarce, aside from one major change. Sony pushed the release date from April 2022 to October 2022. It wasn't until early 2021, a whole year and a half after the sequel was announced, that producer Chris Miller revealed they were still working on the script. That might not seem unusual, after all, some scripts take years to refine, but for a movie that was already announced and dated, that was a pretty big red flag. As expected, the October 2022 deadline became impossible to meet, and in December 2021, Sony delayed the movie again, this time by an entire goddamn year, pushing it all the way to June 2023. But that wasn't the only surprise we got. They also announced that Across the Spider-Verse would now be the first of a two-part story, with Beyond the Spider-Verse being developed alongside it. Keep that in mind as you watch the rest of this video. Originally, Across the Spider-Verse was supposed to be roughly the same size as its predecessor, but that's not what happened. Instead, it ballooned into an enormous production with the largest crew of any animated film ever at the time, nearly 1,000 artists. That's honestly nuts. But as we'll soon see, ambition without structure comes at a pretty steep cost. Despite having such a massive crew, production on Across the Spider-Verse was anything but smooth. Reports started to surface that over 100 artists had left the project due to extreme overwork, caused in large part by Phil Lord's management style. When 10% of your team quits, there's clearly something wrong. Animators were being asked to make last-minute changes to fully rendered sequences, something that is usually unheard of in the animation industry at that stage of production. Normally, major rewrites and changes happen early during the storyboarding process, but on Across the Spider-Verse, sequences were being torn apart and redone long after they should have been locked. Animators described the working conditions as absolutely brutal, with some reporting 11-hour workdays, 7 days a week for over a year to compensate for the lost time. The core issue stemmed from Phil Lord being ridiculously indecisive creatively and having utmost control. He would even have final say against the directors. If Phil has a note that contradicts their notes, his note takes precedence. While his creative oversight obviously played a key role in shaping Across the Spider-Verse into an incredible movie, it also led to an exhausting and chaotic production process. Any singular change in the story often involved animation, final layout, cloth and hair effects, which have to repeatedly be redone anytime there's an animation change, the department that passes over the characters with ink lines and does all this crazy stuff like explosions, lighting and compositing, editing. These are a lot of artists affected by one change. Imagine an endless stream of them. It's not a surprise that morale was incredibly low during production, with a lot of people reassessing if this was even something they wanted to be a part of. On top of the demanding hours, many workers faced financial and job insecurity. Sony Pictures Imageworks, the studio handling the animation, is not a union studio, meaning artists had very little bargaining power and low pay. With the animators being underpaid, it forced many of them to rely on overtime pay just to make ends meet. Living in an expensive city like Vancouver made matters worse, with some struggling to cover costs despite working.
Bro, you know that's why I would low-key hate animator, because, bro, you wanna know what's the worst thing about being overworked as an animator? Is that, bro, you're doing like 11-hour work days for like so long, not making enough. You have all other bills to pay. You have your other life to get to, and it's like and you're sitting down the whole time, so that's terrible for your back, right? And it's like, bro, I used to think that this shit was like only in Japan, because in Japan we already know that them dudes be overworked as hell. Like, and you wanna know what is? Say like they did this in Japan, same overworking. Once it would be more acceptable. Well, not acceptable, but like by the economy, right? And they'd probably have to pay like half of what they pay. But like that should probably cost like 20 million. And that's excluding people's paychecks. No, that's including people's paychecks. Because them animators, they're underpaid as hell in Japan.
Excessive hours. For international artists, the situation was even scarier. Many were working on visas and saw SPI as their best chance to stay in Canada, making it difficult to push back against the grueling conditions or leave the project. They were forced to endure long hours, low pay, and constant pressure just to maintain job security. A Vulture report also detailed how some animators left because they physically couldn't sustain the workload, while others pushed through months of intense crunch just to meet shifting creative demands. One artist described the experience as death by 1,000 paper cuts, with changes constantly undoing progress. Another stated that despite loving the final film, they would never work on a project with Phil Lord again. Across the Spider-Verse may have been a stunning achievement, but behind the scenes, it came at a steep human cost. That being said, Across the Spider-Verse finally hit theaters in June of 2023, 5 years after the first movie. It was a massive success, earning over $690 million at the box office. But behind the scenes, the production nightmare had left its mark. Many animators had walked away, unwilling to endure another grueling process for the sequel. And then there was Beyond the Spider-Verse, a film that was supposedly being worked on simultaneously. Except it wasn't. Not only was Beyond the Spider-Verse nowhere near completion when Across the Spider-Verse released, but the Vulture report suggests that production hadn't even started. It's no surprise that we've recently heard actors say voice work hasn't even begun in 2025. That's a huge red flag. In animation, voice recording usually happens before or during early animation, as it helps animators match character movements and emotions to the performances. The fact that they haven't started means one thing. The movie isn't just delayed, it's nowhere close to being finished. To make matters worse, Sony initially blamed the delays on the Hollywood strikes of 2023. While it's true that the SAG-AFTRA strike halted a lot of productions, nearly every Sony movie that was delayed due to the strikes has since been released or has a confirmed release date. Beyond the Spider-Verse is the only exception. Not only does it not have a release date, it doesn't even have a confirmed release year. That makes absolutely no sense.
You know what that means, though? Shit, if they're taking this much time, this shit's finna be hot. Hotter than a bit. This shit, that means this shit is gonna be hot, I won't even lie. And I'm gonna play my so I'm cool with them delaying this shit. Give me more time to hone my skills, man. I low-key hope that shit is not released in 2027, I'm not gonna lie.
sense unless there are far bigger issues happening behind the scenes. And then there's the script. Rumors have circulated that Beyond the Spider-Verse's script was completely rewritten after Across the Spider-Verse released, though both composer Daniel Pemberton and producer Chris Miller have denied this. But even if it wasn't fully rewritten, we know that Into the Spider-Verse went through massive rewrites just a year before release, so it really wouldn't be surprising or far-fetched if Beyond the Spider-Verse is facing similar last-minute overhauls. This is clearly how Phil Lord works.
Panadol Extra tablets are boosted by caffeine for powerful pain relief. That's one for Panadol.
With Vinted's new categories, you can now sell even more pre-loved items. Don't use it, sell it.
In early 2024, we got another bizarre update. Composer David hinted at a 2025 release, teasing that one of his songs would be in the movie. But then Karen Sony said in August 2024 that voice recording was starting in a few months. Fast forward to December and January, and like I said, we know recording hasn't even begun. How is it possible that months later they're still in the same place? And that someone that's part of the movie thought it would be released in 2025, even though Sony has confirmed that's not gonna happen.
Hey,
This
David!
could all potentially mean
What?
animation hasn't even started yet, and if we can that months later they're still in the same place, and that someone that's part of the movie thought it would be released in 2025, even though Sony has confirmed that's not gonna happen. This could all potentially mean animation hasn't even started yet, and if we compare this to past Spider-Verse films, Beyond the Spider-Verse is years away from completion. I mean, honestly, with the lack of updates and the fact that voice recording is only just starting, I really cannot see this movie being released before 2027 or 2028. So what is actually going on here? The dark truth is that Phil Lord's control over these movies, while instrumental to their success, has also created a grueling work environment that pushes animators to their absolute breaking point. Artists are tired of being overworked, and Lord's frequent changes and revisions is likely the real reason Beyond the Spider-Verse is taking so goddamn long, especially with how imperative it is to get this last movie absolutely perfect. Also, with the underpaid, overworked nature of this project, it's likely that a lot of people were turned off from working on it, which doesn't help in speeding up production. The fact that Sony is keeping everything so secretive only raises more questions. There hasn't been a single teaser, a single frame of footage, nothing. Compare that to Across the Spider-Verse, which had a teaser released a full year and a half before it hit theaters.
Okay.
This lack of transparency makes me feel like Sony
yeah,
themselves
bro.
don't even know.
I didn't even realize, bro, we've not got shit from Beyond the Spider-Verse since. Not one little thing at all. That's crazy. That shit's probably not going to release in 2027.
when
I'm
the
gonna lie.
movie might be ready.
Because that means you need to get
the
straight out this
situation
year.
only gets more worrying when you look at how this might impact the rest of the industry. The Spider-Verse movies have been hailed as some of the most innovative animation films ever made, pushing the boundaries of what's possible in Western animation. But this level of artistry comes at a massive cost, one that's increasingly difficult to justify in an industry where animators are burning out faster than ever. These are the brutal realities of animation production, especially at major studios like Sony, where extreme overwork is usually treated as the norm. Sony's inability to provide a structured production pipeline combined with Lord's insane creative approach has created a work environment that is not even remotely sustainable. If this pattern continues, it raises serious questions about the future of animation as a whole. Will studios keep pushing for bigger, more ambitious projects at the expense of their workers, or will we finally see a shift in the industry where proper planning and fair labor practices take precedence over last-minute perfectionism? Does it even make sense to try to replicate this incredible animation style if it might take a studio 6, 7, 8, 9 years to produce it if they're not overworking animators? It starts to become hard to envision investing so much into these types of projects while keeping working conditions healthy. The animation industry is at a crossroads, and the outcome of Beyond the Spider-Verse's production could set a precedent for years to come. And what about the Spider-Verse franchise itself? The longer this delay drags on, the more momentum the series risks losing. Thankfully, us Spider-Verse fans are extremely patient, and I think I could
You want to know what it is? I low-key feel like it's never gonna lose momentum. I feel like this shit could literally come out in 2030 and it would still have all its hype.
For many of us, when I say I'd rather a polished, perfected product in 10 years than something rushed in 5. But who knows? The excitement that Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse generated could slowly fade away, leaving Beyond the Spider-Verse as an afterthought. The truth is, Sony finds itself in an impossible situation. Either they rush Beyond the Spider-Verse to meet expectations and risk another grueling, overworked production, or they take their time, but at the cost of the audience losing interest. I'm personally hoping that all of these delays and lack of updates simply means the studio is giving the team all the time it needs to get this right, with zero pressure from external deadlines. If that's the case, and this movie turns out perfect, then this could be an incredible example for other animation studios to point to in terms of how to run production. That being said, it is clear that Beyond the Spider-Verse is in a state of complete uncertainty. Whether it's due to rewrites, animators pushing back against unfair conditions, or just complete mismanagement, one thing is clear. We are a long way from seeing Miles Morales return to the big screen, and unless Sony changes the way it approaches these productions, this might not be the last time we see an animated Sony movie stuck in limbo. The Spider-Verse films were meant to revolutionize animation, but if they're not careful, they might just become a cautionary tale.
The #1 repair conditioner, now without the weigh down. Healthy hair never felt so lightweight. Get yours.
I'm the greatest advertisement for the hottest new super drug that makes you effortlessly beautiful.
Oh damn, child, I'm not gonna lie, like that's crazy to see that insight for like the Spider-Verse movie, because I didn't even know most of that.
Hello, I am Tristan Spone. I'm a professional actor.
But child, what do y'all even think of Spider-Verse?
You might know me as number 2 from Stranger Things 4. But behind every single actor, you have hundreds of roles that they read for, but just ultimately were not cast in. And today we're gonna go through 10 of those roles. Number 1, young Sheldon. So I auditioned for a guest star role in season 6, where I would have been Emily Osment's character's brother. A artist type that was a bit of an outcast, doesn't fit in with his East Texas family, kind of basically the black sheep of the family. I, on the outset, thought I could have a decent shot at this since I am from Texas, but I don't exactly have the rugged southern vibe to me. One of the biggest issues I had with my audition is I did it via Zoom, and with comedy, it is so beat specific. The pacing is so integral, and if you slow it down even a little bit, it can often ruin a lot of the jokes. Just with the natural delay of Zoom, I had a really hard time keeping up with the proper pace of what a comedy scene should feel like.
That's cool. You like cars?
Not really.
Music?
Yeah. Number 2, Manifest. I actually think I booked it. Essentially, I was put on right of first refusal, which means it's down to you and maybe 2 or 3 other actors. It was gonna be for the final episode of season 4 before being upped to a series regular in the entire 5th season. And then it got canceled. They scrapped the character. Netflix picked them back up for season 5 because they had already scrapped the character. They never brought him back. Insightful, soulful, reserved, but has a warmth and compassion as he carries the weight of the world on his shoulders. I recorded the audition from my hotel room in Atlanta while actively shooting Stranger Things. So to be shooting Stranger Things where I'm this sociopathic bully and then immediately have a warm, soulful, kind guy right on the tail end of that, I would have been like, whoop, bam, established as a character actor. Not gonna have any typecast. It didn't happen that way, and now I am kind of that dark antagonist, but everything happens for a reason.
I still feel like myself, if that makes sense. Logically, I should feel like some bizarre science experiment, but...
Number 3, Your Honor. I would have been super, super good for now, but was absolutely atrocious back when I auditioned. Honestly, the audition I had for this is one of my worst of all time because it was before I was actually ready to book professional work. Bless my heart, I tried, but I just had this dumb, goofy, shit-eating grin the entire audition. Number 4, Under the Bridge. I actually thought this was going to be mine. I remember being so confident because it was with the exact same casting director that was with Manifest, so they already knew I was really good. It was just a very quick little scene, so my assumption was, oh, they're just making sure I'm still a good actor. And so I sent the scene in. It was funny, we were under this tornado watch as it was going on. I think that gave a little extra like edge to it because we were actually trying to do the audition before the tornado was about to enter the area. I was editing this tape to send off from the closet while there were active tornado sirens. The original character was troubled and annoyed by his bratty young sister. Gabe has a sadness to him that has struggled with depression. I play depressed characters very, very well. My eyes just drip with all of this torturedness, I guess. Probably not right now, but a lot of times it's about who's the best fit. The actor they cast might have just looked more like the real person that it was based off of. Number 5, No Hard Feelings. This is similar to Young Sheldon in that if this was for a drama movie, this would have been mine. Genuinely, I think my No Hard Feelings audition is really, really strong.
You want this one, chat?
This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform to build a professional website, strengthen your brand, and grow your business online. People usually either hate Tobey Maguire or love him. He's either the greediest guy in Hollywood or the smartest, either a one-role actor or he just outgrew acting and moved on. Today, let's try to crack this enigma. What passion brought Tobey into acting?
I need that money.
How did DiCaprio kickstart his career? Which movie did they try to erase from existence? How did Tobey make 100 times more than Andrew Garfield for playing Peter Parker? And who did Maguire have to seduce to stay Spider-Man? This is Hollywood lore. Let's go. Now we know we're living in the version of reality where Tobey Maguire became an actor. But the odds of that not happening were pretty high. At first, little Tobey wanted to be a chef like his dad, and whenever his mom tried to talk him into acting classes, he'd pull a dramatic face and chop onions instead. Apparently, Tobey's parents already had some suspicions and just paid him $100 to visit damn classes. Facing such a solid argument, Tobey immediately decided to become a talented actor. Maguire first showed up on screen in the 1989 adventure comedy, The Wizard. His role there was so major, he didn't even make it into the credits. So really, Tobey's career mostly started in TV shows, where he stood somewhere in the background. He even managed to stand next to Chuck Norris in Walker, Texas Ranger. But in general, spotting Tobey in those requires a telescope. The only noticeable role Maguire had at the time was in the sitcom Great Scott. But that one had a different problem. You needed a telescope to find the show itself. It was one of the least popular series on TV and got canceled almost immediately. The actor also did some widely random ads, from Atari Lynx to McDonald's and Doritos. Around that time, Tobey met another young talented actor at the audition, who was also running around TV series and blockbusters like Critters 3. Leo and Tobey were both trying to get the lead role in This Boy's Life with Robert De Niro. When DiCaprio was picked, he didn't flex on his new buddy Maguire. Instead, he asked the director to cast Tobey as well. And just like that, as they say,
I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Don't they kind of remind you of a certain other sweet Twix duo? This Boy's Life didn't exactly crush it at the box office, but did pretty well on home video. Plus, critics loved the movie. Leo got a whole basket of nominations as the promising newcomer, and these days some even call it one of his best films. Tobey might have had a secondary role, but he still scored a few perks, like filmmakers actually started casting the actor, and not just as background furniture. The movies themselves weren't big hits though, and in the now cult classic Empire Records, Maguire's character got straight up cut. Not that Tobey had time to whine. His buddy Leo was riding high and gathered a crew of other young stars, including Maguire. The Wild Bunch was nicknamed the Pussy Posse, probably rode a yellow Chevrolet Silverado, and tore up clubs. Fueled by their own greatness and inspired by Kevin Smith's Clerks, the guys decided to cook up something similar. And that's how the indie improv film Don's Plum was born. It started off as a short where Tobey, Leo, and a few others drank beer and told stories which nowadays would have definitely pissed off 1/3 of the planet. But in the good old days, you could send something like that at a random no-name film fest and walk away with a certificate for creativity, which is probably what Leo and Tobey were going for. Once the raw footage started turning into a full-length cinematic gem, the actors immediately got very excited and did everything they could for the release to get canceled. After all the legal drama, some especially frightening scenes were cut, and the film was released in 2001 everywhere except the US and Canada. Thanks to Lars von Trier's efforts, it even got screened at Berlinale. But according to reports, no one there had a spiritual awakening or grew a third eye from watching the movie. The only real result was potential trouble for DiCaprio's career, which was already somewhere in the stratosphere.
That's crazy. I didn't even know they knew.
And suddenly, Leo wasn't so into filming experimental raw chats with his buddies anymore. Maguire's career by 2001 was a different story. Yeah, it seemed like things were finally picking up for him in the late 90s, even with all the box office disasters. Ang Lee's The Ice Storm, Woody Allen's Deconstructing Harry, and Terry Gilliam's Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas all flopped at the box office. Each had a budget around $20 million, and barely made half of that back. But if those directors' names ring any bells for you, it should be clear why the money didn't really matter. Critics showered all three films with praise. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas turned into a cult classic instantly. So everyone was patting Tobey on the back, telling him he was doing a good job. And in 1998, the actor landed the lead in what would become one of most outstanding projects in his filmography.
Pleasantville. I've never heard of this one.
Pleasantville was the first movie that was created by scanning and digitizing recorded footage for the purpose of removing or manipulating colors. 163,000 frames were scanned in order to selectively desaturate and adjust contrast digitally. The film became a great example of outstanding visuals at the time, and also a textbook one of how not to schedule your crew's working hours. The film's cinematographer Brent Hirschman fell asleep while driving home after a 19-hour shoot and went straight off the road to meet his maker. A new cinematographer was needed. The family filed a lawsuit, and the crew got pissed enough to demand a strict 14-hour workday from New Line Cinema.
Did somebody say just please? Made you cook up, we saw ya. Let me call the reinforcements for ya. Did somebody say just please?
That demand even got a name, Brent's Rule. Sounds serious, but in the 90s, nobody really gave a crap about that kind of stuff. So the studio just winked and politely advised to finish the movie on time. Speaking of pulling off deadlines, such a bizarre coincidence, this very video is brought to you by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform to build a professional website faster than Steven Seagal gains 2 more pounds. Like, yeah, that fast, thanks to Blueprint AI. Just answer a couple of questions, and the local version of Edie assembles a cohesive design, sections, and starter copy you can tweak instantly. Design tools are so intuitive, they'll make you look like Joaquin Phoenix falling for advanced tech in your computer. Drag and drop these layouts, choose styles and effects, browse enormous libraries of high-quality resources for every taste and design. And if you're an Edward Norton-level control freak like myself, you'll especially love the built-in analytics, tracking every visitor, every click, and observing conversion rates. Try it yourself. 14 days free, no credit card, no drama. Head to squarespace.com/HollywoodLore for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, use code HollywoodLore to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain.
I had to beat an old lady with a stick to get these.
Back to Pleasantville. All the crunch and visual innovation didn't help Pleasantville at the box office. It sank, making $50 million on a budget of $60. Still, the movie earned a bunch of nominations, including Oscars, and Tobey himself scored a Saturn Award, his first ever win. The effect was immediate. The next year, Maguire got a role in The Cider House Rules, directed by Lasse Hallström, the guy behind What's Eating Gilbert Grape and Chocolate. Originally, the lead role was meant for DiCaprio, and that makes sense considering his performance in Gilbert Grape, landed him Oscar and Golden Globe nominations. But for whatever reason, Leo passed, and he wasn't the only one. Rumor has it Edward Norton and the sugary duo Damon and Affleck walked away too. So when there was basically no one left, the producers chose Toby. Whether Leo had anything to do with that decision, well, that part's still a mystery, so you decide. Charlize Theron wasn't exactly thrilled with that casting choice, especially since she had to strip down during filming, while Maguire was already practicing his signature, smug, horny facial expression. The actress even said Toby acted like a diva on set, and working with him was a pain in the butt. But then during the promo tour, Theron suddenly changed her tune and started calling him a great guy you wouldn't want to strangle at all. The Cider House Rules was Toby's first commercially successful film, making $89 million, costing $24. And yeah, the awards again were there. Actually, a ton of them, including 7 Oscar nominations. Toby himself was ignored by critics, but whatever, it still counts. Without Cider House, things might have gone south for his career, because around that same time came one of the year's biggest flops, another Ang Lee project, Ride with the Devil. This Civil War Western made just over $500,000 at the box office on a budget of $38. Adjusted for today, that's like making a movie for $80 million and earning just $1. Some say part of the problem was Maguire himself. Like no badass action, no cool cowboy vibes, just long-haired, sad Toby in the stupid freaking hat. The studio didn't believe in the film either, skipped the marketing campaign, and cut the screen count. 6 years later, Ang Lee would make another cowboy movie. This time about real, strong male friendship, and that one hit the jackpot. Ride with the Devil lacked that cowboy bonding magic, so the movie sank hard. Wonder Boys with Michael Douglas flopped too, making just $33 million on a budget of $55. That's a solid one for a movie like that, and the reason, as you might have guessed, lies in the name mentioned above. Sure, Michael Douglas was generous enough to slash his usual fee, but slashing still meant $10 million. So Toby's career by 2001 was like that. Just one commercial hit, a bunch of critic-favorite movies where no one really singled him out, and a recent streak of box office flops. And yeah, Cats and Dogs, of course. An animation where Toby did voice work alongside Alec Baldwin and Susan Sarandon. It made $200 million, costing $60. Pretty nice, but come on. We all know voice work is different, and you can't really count it as a real win. No, it's not like Maguire was facing the real possibility of working in Burger King or anything. In the early 2000s, both he and Kirsten Dunst were offered parts in a horror film that actually started out as a script for an X-Files episode. True fans recognize it as Final Destination, which ended up becoming a standalone movie and made $113 million on a budget of $23. Toby and Dunst passed and were goddamn right, which kind of sounds weird given how well the film did. But you already know why it's actually true. Spider-Man almost ended up in Cannon Films' hands. The guys who cooked punch fests with Chuck Norris, the Belgian ballet master, and other American ninjas. Back in the late 80s, the studio bought the rights to bring friendly neighborhood hero to the screen. According to rumors, they imagined a mix of The Fly and Darkman, shooting this Frankenstein with leftover money from Bloodsport or whatever. Clearly the universe wasn't having it, and Cannon Films went under. After that, the rights to Peter Parker got tossed around like a hot potato, until Sony finally caught it and brought in Sam Raimi.
Conquer bedwetting and
Sony
wake up
made probably the
feeling
best investment ever.
ninjawesome with Ninjamas pajama pants.
Perfection.
He was thrilled to finally adapt a famous comic instead of inventing one from scratch just to film it. More on that in our Liam Neeson video. After the success of X-Men, Hollywood started taking comic book movies more seriously. And for Peter Parker, the studio wanted someone solid. Leonardo DiCaprio, Heath Ledger, or Freddie Prinze Jr. at the very least. But actors were still spooked by comics, probably remembering what happened to Chris O'Donnell's career. So, when the choice reached Wes Bentley, director Sam Raimi stepped in and pitched Tobey Maguire, who had really impressed him in the Cider House Rules. The studio initially resisted, but Tobey showed them something in the audition that made them reconsider. Word is what Tobey showed off was his newly beefed up biceps, which he'd been working on for a role in Training Day. That part eventually went to Ethan Hawke, but as we now know, Tobey didn't exactly lose out. All that muscle came in handy when he started training for Spider-Man with the same guy who later prepped Brad Pitt for Troy. Tobey didn't get quite as epic as Pitt, of course, and definitely not like Henry Cavill later on. Maybe because Cavill had chicken breasts and Tobey was a vegetarian, with, let's say, some protein sourcing issues. What happened next? We know. 2 weeks at #1 in box office, $827 million on a budget of $139, a pile of award nominations including Oscars and iconic Kiss in the Rain. MTV even gave it an award, which is pretty hilarious if you know how it was shot. According to the actors, it was like that. Tobey was hanging upside down, shivering from the cold, with rainwater gurgling in his nose, while Kirsten was trying not to get smacked in the head by his boot. Surely romantic in its own way, just not the kind you expect. Needless to say, all that discomfort paid off big time, especially for Maguire. He got $4 million for the role plus a contract that included a possibility for raises in sequels if the film crushed it.
Double the money.
Tobey almost sabotaged all that success during the promo tour, by the way.
Oh.
On one of the shows, he casually dropped he'd never read a comic book and honestly didn't give a crap. The producers were super thrilled by this level of honesty, and similar confessions mysteriously stopped. A bit annoyed by the mighty producers, Tobey decided to become a mighty producer himself, starting with Spike Lee's 25th Hour. Word is, Maguire originally wanted to star there himself, but backed out for some reason. Maybe the reason was Edward Norton, circling the project with fiery eyes. Norton pushed hard for the lead, pouring his entire Red Dragon salary into 25th Hour. Not an easy argument to beat.
I need that money.
More on that in our Norton video, but let's keep going. Instead of 25th Hour, Tobey jumped into Seabiscuit. Being a producer there, he modestly demanded $12 million for also being a talented lead. Critics loved the film and threw numerous Oscar nominations at it, including Best Picture, though the movie didn't actually win anything. At the box office, Seabiscuit didn't shine, making $148 million, costing $87. But here's the twist. Home video sales brought in just as much, pushing the total to $300 million. Given the massive success of the first Spider-Man, the studio started working on the sequel the second they noticed the opening weekend numbers, which, by the way, was a massive $115 million. The release of the second film was scheduled for 2004, and for the most part, everything went according to plan except for one major surprise.
His paycheck.
That surprise was Tobey Maguire asking for a $20 million paycheck. The actor's contract for the first film technically allowed a move like that, and getting $12 million for Seabiscuit only fueled the fire. Tobey clearly figured he could just add another $8 million each year to his fee and live on Easy Street. Great news for him, but the studio suddenly wasn't happy hearing about this clever plan. Instead, they quickly Delta to find someone a little more affordable. Yeah, the official reason wasn't filthy evergreen pieces of paper, but Maguire's back problems, which he got while filming Seabiscuit. Anyway, instead of Toby Jake Gyllenhaal was squeezed into the Spidey suit, and he'd already started doing a bit of wall crawling. Seeing where things were headed, Maguire quickly fell in love with the daughter of Universal's studio head. Rumor has it, the potential father-in-law had a little talk with some very important people and explained that with great talent comes great payment responsibility.
He's downstairs. I could be a beach.
That little chit-chat was curative. Maguire's back pain magically vanished and he was ready to do stunts again, while Jake Gyllenhaal was booted straight to the day after tomorrow. Still, to pay very important people some respects, Toby had to shave $2 million off his ask, settling for 18. All that got sorted, but things suddenly didn't get any easier. There were issues with pay. The chat was curative. Great. The potential father-in-law had a little talk with some very important people and explained that with great talent comes great payment responsibility. That little chit-chat was curative. Maguire's back pain magically vanished and he was ready to do stunts again, while Jake Gyllenhaal was booted straight to the day after tomorrow. Still, to pay very important people some respects, Toby had to shave $2 million off his ask, settling for 18. All that got sorted, but things suddenly didn't get any easier. There were issues with the script, which was rewritten several times. In the early drafts, Otto Octavius was a young science geek hitting on Mary Jane. Feeling the soap opera between the three might get boring, Raimi planned to use a couple more villains, Lizard and Black Cat. In the end, all that was scrapped and someone older and more respectable had to portray Doc Ock. Ed Harris, Chris Cooper, and Christopher Walken were all considered, but Sam Raimi watched Frida at just the right time and insisted on Alfred Molina. Spider-Man 2 made less at the box office than the first one, but let's be clear. Less than the first one still meant $785 million on a budget of $200. Definitely a hit, just not as huge as Sony was expecting. Nice reviews from critics and an Oscar for visual effects helped a bit. But let's be real here. Who would up the sequel's budget by a third and expect to make less than the original? Because of that nuance, Maguire had to downsize his fee to $15 million in Part 3, but he did manage to get a bigger percentage of the box office profits. The third Spider-Man took a few years to make it to theaters, and in the meantime, Toby starred in Steven Soderbergh's noir drama The Good German. With the franchise about Ocean's buddies under his belt, Soderbergh occasionally cooked smaller projects, probably to make some festival noise and satisfy the critics. The Good German was clearly one of those, just like his Che Guevara films a couple years later. But The Good German didn't get lucky. Barely anyone noticed it, except for an Oscar nom for Best Score and a near win for the Golden Bear in Berlin. Maybe with such a fluffy title, this film was destined to get into the Berlinale no matter what. But anyways, The Good German didn't get the award and tanked at the box office amazingly, earning $6 million against its budget of $32. If filming Spider-Man 2 was a bit problematic, then making the third one smelled like full-blown ultra-violence. After the sequel underperformed, the studio stepped in and demanded Venom, Gwen Stacy, and all sorts of cool stuff that would lure people to theaters. Sam Raimi, who wanted Vulture, Sandman, and a heavy dose of drama, was forced to oblige and rebuild the film to fit the studio's demands. These efforts actually paid off. Spider-Man 3 made more money than previous parts, nearly $900 million. But naturally, there was a catch. This time, the budget wasn't $130 million or even $200. It was $260, actually. And even that number is considered low by many, especially given the massive marketing campaign. Back then, pretty much anyone looking to grab a bite would run into the friendly neighborhood face at Burger King, Papa John's, 7-Eleven, and every other spot with affordable food. All that parade obviously wasn't free, and odds are it didn't fit into that $260 million. Even though Raimi later called making Spider-Man 3 the worst experience of his career, and Toby admitted his acting there wasn't exactly top tier.
From your coffee dripping to your muscle pumping era, with Vinted's new categories, you can now sell all the items they left behind.
Neither of them said no to a fourth film. Raimi wanted to bring in the Vulture, played by John Malkovich, and Black Cat, supposedly Anne Hathaway. Toby, on the other hand, didn't really want much, just money.
Double the money.
And rumor has it, he was asking for a shitload of it again. Raimi tortured the script for ages, then the studio declared they wanted the whole thing in 3D and ready for summer 2011. And that's when the director's nerves finally snapped.
I am dead inside.
Raimi Delta from the project, and with him gone, the franchise was rebooted. Imagine the glee on very important folks' faces when they signed Andrew Garfield's paycheck, a generous $500,000.
I'm lame.
For the sequel, Andrew got a full $1 million. Studio locked that number into his contract beforehand, spooked they might end up with another Toby situation. Sneaky move, but the studio's anxiety made sense. With all the salaries and box office percentages, Maguire made $150 million off Peter Parker. After soaking in that golden rain, Toby vanished from the screen for a while. He moved to producing films and high-stakes poker tournaments, where he built up a bit of a rep. The media even claimed he earned more from poker than from acting. Those exclusive poker nights were hosted by Molly Bloom, the one whose life story later became Molly's Game with Jessica Chastain. These games had millions of dollars in play, with Leonardo DiCaprio, Ben Affleck, Wall Street Sharks, and sports stars all at the table. But according to Bloom, Toby wasn't just the most successful player. He was also the biggest jerk. She wrote that Maguire enjoyed mocking losers, once offered her $1,000 to bark like a dog, and in general, he and DiCaprio loved flexing around like they were the neighborhood bosses. In the movie about Bloom, by the way, Maguire is supposedly played by Michael Cera. Although Michael's character isn't named outright, anyone familiar with the story got the hint instantly, and Cera later confirmed the rumors. While playing poker with the next Darby or whatever, Toby unexpectedly appeared in a tiny role that some genuinely consider the best one in his entire career. That would be a cameo in Tropic Thunder, which Maguire strongly resisted, coming up with all kinds of excuses to turn it down. Supposedly, it was Robert Downey Jr. who finally convinced him, promising everything would be all right. In the 2009 film Brothers, Toby actually wanted to participate from the start. He ended up playing another role. Director Jim Sheridan decided it should be Jake Gyllenhaal seducing Natalie Portman. And Toby, who already had an internal fight with Venom on screen, had to do something like that once more. For his efforts, Maguire received a Golden Globe nomination. A big deal for the actor, since it's still his only nod from a major award. The movie itself sank at the box office, making $43 million on a budget of $26. 2 years later, Maguire showed up in the details, but not that anyone really noticed it. The actor had mostly moved to producing by then, founding a company called Material Pictures. Toby's projects were Country Strong, Rock of Ages, Seeking Justice.
How'd that get in there?
And all of them failed financially. It kind of looked like the start of a big career drama, but then out of nowhere, Maguire scored a big hit in 2013.
Great Gatsby.
According to the official story, Toby landed The Great Gatsby thanks to his immense talent. Bad people claim that's mostly true, but the talent in question belonged to his best buddy, Leo, who insisted on casting Maguire. Ben Affleck could have ended up in that movie too, by the way. In that case, the filmmakers might have accidentally ended up making something about poker anyway, since those three were the most frequent guests at Molly Bloom's games. But Affleck didn't make it into the cast, and of course, the movie immediately succeeded at the box office, earning $354 million, costing $105 million. The Great Gatsby was the last profitable project in Toby's filmography where he was anywhere near the spotlight. Things really got screwed in 2014 when Pawn Sacrifice earned less than $6 million on a $19 million budget. Maybe audiences just weren't in the mood for chess, or maybe Molly Bloom's recently published poker book had something to do with it. So after portraying Bobby Fischer Maguire, fully shifted to producing, only making some voice work in The Boss Baby. Some of his producer projects actually did okay at the box office, like The Fifth Wave. That movie cost $38 million and made $110 million, but there were some nuances. Only a third of that came from the US. Critics absolutely hated it, and by that point, the amount of teen dystopias was enough to make your whole body itch. So even though there were plans for a franchise, the sequel was canceled. Another Maguire success as a producer was Ilya Naishuler's Nobody. The movie did great at the box office, even with the release being delayed thanks to a certain global virus. So it seemed Toby was pretty comfortable behind the scenes, and Could have easily stayed there for more than 7 years. But in 2021, the actor had to wear the red and blue suit once again, this time with a little bonus in the form of butt padding, supposedly. The butt padding rumor, by the way, was actually started by Tom Holland. In an interview, Tom mentioned that one of the Spideys had a little help back there, though he politely refused to say who. Could have even been himself. But of course, bad people immediately pinned it on Tobey. Some also claimed Maguire demanded no less than $10 million for his appearance. Official sources called it nonsense, saying Maguire got just $1 million for his 30 minutes of screen time, same as Andrew Garfield. So No Way Home kind of sort of restored paycheck justice and leveled the playing field. Unsurprisingly, the movie was a massive hit. Audiences screaming with joy in theaters. Nearly $2 billion at the box office. And not just the most successful Spider-Man film, but one of the top 10 highest grossing movies of all time. The hype was huge, but it didn't really do much for Maguire's career. Sure, in 2022, he popped up in Babylon, which bombed at the box office. And in 2023, the actor had a single episode role in Extrapolations by Apple TV+. And that's it, actually. Tobey's upcoming projects are all on the producing side, which means we won't be seeing him on screen anytime soon. Every now and then, rumors pop up, like the Batman screenwriter cooking up a script for Spider-Man 4, or Kirsten Dunst sharing random ideas about continuing the franchise. We live in an age where it's possible to see Maguire as Peter Parker again someday, and not necessarily in some meta-multiverse stuff, but for now it's all speculation. The guy's 50, he's doing just fine as a producer, and if he ever decides to make a return, he'll figure something out. Maybe the daughter of the Marvel Studios boss will quickly fall in love with him, or maybe his big buddy will pull some strings. Honestly, we could all use a friend like DiCaprio, or maybe Matt Damon? Speaking of, we've got a whole video about Damon's career love story with Ben Affleck. Go check it out. Thanks for watching. Leave a like, subscribe.
Okay, chat. I feel like we learned some valuable things here, which is one. Once you land a big role, that's not, don't think like your life is peachy keen. It might be peachy keen, but like in the sense of like acting more big roles, shit might not be peachy keen. Number two, just because you are a big actor doesn't mean that's going to translate into other things. Number three, which is connections. Seeing how that girl got him that role. Hold on. Okay, yeah. Seeing how that girl got him that role, that shows that connections is a huge thing and that you really need a lot of connections. Number three is that shit.